Is there anyone from our next group who's supposed to present here? Is the group ready today, or just waiting for them to show up? Okay. How many more people? Three. Okay. I'll lecture maybe to about 25 after, and then hopefully everybody's. Have you spoken with them? Okay, winding down. Next week, no class. Thanksgiving week. We come back and we only got 2 weeks left. All right, so we're really near the end. Hopefully, the last week we can, finals week, maybe one of those days we can maybe have some pizza, watch a movie, just kind of talk about stuff, maybe to bring stuff, candy, snacks, etc. Okay, but let's wrap up socio-emotional development and early adulthood. All right, so last class we talked about the physical and cognitive challenges, the changes people are going through at early adulthood. Talking about here, 18 to maybe 40 years of age. We put it kind of into tiers. Right? Say, hey, if you're still in your early 20s, you're probably looking for a job. You're not really certain about your identity yet, right? Defining yourself. You probably don't have the financial stability that you'd like. College, you're still figuring it out. Others may progress a little quicker, just like we saw in adolescence. Some people do mature a little bit quicker in early adulthood as well too. Some people may already have cars. People may already have investments. Some people may already have a home at 21 years of age. People may decide to start a family at 20 years of age. Some people may be married, right? And others say, no, I won't do any of that, right? You got more time, we're still gonna figure it out. Figure it out. So early on in this stage, we say there's instability usually at the beginning. Things kind of taper off and you become more stable, a little bit more accepting of who you are as you progress. But here we're talking about the psychosocial changes. Right? The big one is mating. Now people are dating into serious relationships, right? Potential for marriage. People looking for long term. Maybe not so. Maybe people are unstable in this aspect and they're very promiscuous. Maybe they're exploring their bodies and people and kind of wavering off the responsibilities of families and things like that. There's the struggles with the financial part, right? Maybe you're living, bouncing around with more people, roommating, cohabitating, right? All these sorts of things. Challenges from a social, emotional perspective. So it's described as one of the most unstable periods in life, right? This early adulthood. You probably don't, you're in early adulthood now too. So the question would be like, hey, do you have a home? No. You have any investments? No. Right? Some of you may not have vehicles. You get your education, that's your focus right now. Right? You probably don't want to have children at this stage. You don't want to wait a little. But kind of unstable. If you're not in college, what are you doing? Right? You're working at Burger King, Chipotle or something, Menards, right? Income is not sufficient to usually live and live well. So there's some instability there. A lot of this unstableness leads to depression. Right? So this stage has some of the highest prevalence of depression because you're still figuring out who you are. You may still figuring out your own identity, who you're attracted to, your sexual orientation. You may be questioning yourself in that degree, maybe questioning religious beliefs, spirituality, figuring out if you lean left or right in politics, usually volume, trying to organize yourself in that way. So high rates of residential change, people bounce around, sleep on people's couches significantly in this period. Changes in romantic relationships, right? We're exploring the mating scene and all the challenges of that. And that prevalence of mental health disorders. We say, yeah, you're an adult, but you don't feel like an adult. Anyone here feels like an adult? You're adults, right? You're over 18. Who can honestly say they feel like an adult? Right? Like, hey, you're an adult. You're a legal majority. You're a legal adult. You're over the age of 18. Right? Vote. I can't drink yet, unfortunately. Right? But you can do pretty much anything else. Go get yourself a place to live, buy a car. You don't have to worry about mom and dad. But you may say, I still don't feel like an adult, because what does it mean to be an adult? Right? Your perspective may be like, oh, an adult is someone who has property, has a family, has real responsibilities, has a real job, right? Cars, travel, etc., etc. You may feel that you are not fitting into that category. So it's a personal thing, personal characteristics, right? We say, hey, once again, culture, race, ethnicity kind of play into this, and socioeconomic status. Hey, you come from a wealthy family, you're in a family business. You already probably have a high level position. Dad gave it to you, mom gave it to you, right? For others, you say the struggle is real. You got to start from the bottom. You're in a particular culture, and like, hey, you better start working on your family already, right? Like in this family, we start early, don't start late. Right? Pros and cons of that as well too. Identity exploration, right? We say, hey, you're questioning everything. You don't know who you are. You're not really sure about your own fashion, right? You don't know who you really want to fall into a category of subcultures. Skater, or you're into hip hop. You like this type of music. You found a new category of music you like. You want to be surrounded possibly by people who are like you and listen to things like you. But there's some optimism. Transitions are not universal, because we say culture, SES, and race ethnicity is a real thing. A lot of research we have is focused on college students and we say heterosexual sort of aspects. And then advanced education and adulthood can also be a big thing too. Who plans on going to grad school? Just one person. Right? It's a big question, right? What we can see is that the more education we have, it usually translates into more lifetime earning incomes, right, over the course of a lifetime. So yeah, people with master's degrees tend to make more than people with a bachelor's. At the doctorate level, say PhD and things like that, yeah, I think there's a difference. But there's sort of a different sort of component of, I would say, power and privilege that kind of comes with that. Right? The doctorate level, you tend to be in more bigger, powerful circles, right? In some regard, the prestige of it all. Identity, role confusion, right? So they say, hey, we're questioning our morality, we're questioning religion, we're questioning politics. You still maybe feel that you're socially sort of pushed to not be your authentic self and how you think about politics and religion. You still, maybe self-esteem, insecure about your own beliefs, your own perspectives. You want to fit in with people, you don't want to say the wrong thing, offend people, but you don't know how to handle those uncomfortable things at this stage. Gender, sexual identity, hey, you're out of the home, so you can kind of do whatever you want. You can explore, if you had some tendencies before, but you didn't really express them because you were sort of always surrounded by family. Now might be the time. People are exploring their identities to some degree. And then ethnic racial identity, right? In colleges, people tend to link up with maybe groups that affiliate with their ethnic background, like sororities, fraternities. You'll find a high degree of Hispanics linking up with fraternities, sororities that are kind of more for Hispanics, and African Americans tend to incline a little bit more to, or who are racially or ethnic of their own. Intimacy, mating, commitment, right? Big time, this is a challenge, right? We say, hey, mating, we have attachment styles, right? So we're back to that old attachment style, right? How are you gonna operate in relationships, right? Based on the upbringing in your Anybody remember the attachment styles we talked about before? We say, hey, some people have the secure attachment style. They're healthy, they communicate openly, they're secure, they're not anxious about their partners or their relationships or their friendships, right? So we say those people are secure. Mom and dad gave them a healthy sort of relationship, right? They were there when they needed them, but they also let them have a little bit of freedom too. We have things like anxious avoidant. Right? So getting to these relationships, you may find that your partner doesn't like to get close, right? I don't know, they just don't open up. How come they won't open up to you? It feels like they can't really make a breakthrough with the partner, right? We have the anxious part because we say that person actually faces anxiety about getting close to people, right? They don't want to get close. They don't want to really open up. They have some sort of stress about opening up. We have things like anxious, ambivalent, other parts of anxious. Well, we'll come back to them more in these next couple of slides. We say, hey, there's some major challenges with intimacy. One, we have this subconscious anthropological need to reproduce. Right? So sex is a huge part in this area, right, in this sort of phase. Women have a tendency to search out men who have, we say there's a prevalence, and we're talking about heterosexual relationships, higher SES. We say why that will be, well, we say anthropologically, right, and even subconsciously, they're looking to have a secure partner for when they become pregnant and have to rear a child. And you say, well, Dr. Ross, that's not true. I'm not thinking about that. I say, well, that's the subconscious part. We're hardwired and designed in order to procreate, right? It's only when we use that prefrontal cortex to push things off and plan, not to procreate, but then things happen, mistakes. Men have to have more of a tendency of mating, finding a mate to reproduce. What's the number one feature we look for? All the men in class. We look for women. It's the most prevalent thing. Beauty, right? We look for beautiful women. Anthropologically, subconsciously, because that correlates us to health. Right? We say beauty equals health. Healthy. Right, you can say beauty is subjective. It's in the eye of the beholder, so who's beautiful, who's not. But for the most part, men are hardwired to seek out beauty and aesthetics. Right? So when you date, not necessarily the conversation is not going to be like, hey, what do you do for work? If it's a male talking to a female. Right? But it's usually when it's a female talking about a potential male partner, she's probably more concerned about who you are and what you do. Right? What do you do? Who are you? Where are you going in life? Right? For us, it's probably not so much of a concern. We could potentially care less at the initial stages of it. Marriage. 50% of marriages fail. Marriage, divorce. 1970s, let's say 1970, there were about, the average age of marriage was, I think, 21. Let's say today, some of the data is old on this, but say today, the average age of marriage is 25 for females, 27 for males. Right, so people are taking longer time for marriage and to have kids. There's a high correlation with kids as well too. Usually kids are around the same, first child, right? It means you typically have the first child on average after you're married, right? For the most part. Marriages, second marriages. So if you do get divorced, usually the rate, if you do get remarried, the rate of divorce goes higher. I think for second marriage is like 67% of second marriages fail in divorce. Right, so you're going through a lot of big responsible situations here, whether it's marriage, whether it's children, all sorts of things. So postponing intimacy is sort of something we see now. People are becoming way more educated over time, and they're kind of waiting and planning, wanting to travel, do all these great things in this stage. There's also a fourth one too here too. So it says secure is healthy, you can communicate well. Insecure, avoid if you're with somebody, they avoid their sort of emotional connection with you. They don't really want to bond. Insecure, resistant, a little bit of instability there. They be clingy, very clingy. And there's also insecure, disorganized as well too. So you usually find somebody who's very clingy, right? We said going back to parenting styles, mom was always there to pick up the pieces, a little too urgent with picking up the pieces for you, solving problems. With avoidant, hey, mom was not there. Mom and dad was not there when we needed them. So you don't normally have trust with people, right? You don't really open up with people. You couldn't open up with your parents. And then disorganized. Mom and dad was there half of the time, the other time they just completely disappear. So they're clingy and they're also avoidant. So you're on this roller coaster of emotions with this person in a relationship, right? They totally ghost you, and they pop back up in your life with random texts, right? It will be very sort of erratic behavior. Social clock, normative age graded events. We think, hey, you know what, at a certain time, maybe about like these age, you should kind of have things getting together, right? 25 to 27, 27, 25 is when that prefrontal cortex usually gets done completing its growth, right? So that's kind of interesting. It's like prefrontal cortex also is around this time where most people get married and most people have children. So usually around that time, your life should be kind of moving towards stability. Casual sex, right? This stage, hooking up. People are just hooking up, exploring themselves, but then there's tendency to be very reckless in their sexual interactions. So we see a high degree of STIs, right? Unwanted pregnancies, things dealing with abortion, and those sorts of things because of hookup culture. Sexual coercion and assault. Most people in this stage, I would say about a quarter of females have reported some sort of sexual harassment. Maybe about a third of females in this phase reported sexual assault. Right? You say a lot of reasons for them. Maybe there's domestic violence of some sort, right? Intimate partner violence, unwanted sexual behavior. Maybe it's substances involved, too much drinking. Maybe there's fear, right? Being forced, coercion, things of that nature. We say attractiveness is really important for males, right? For females, we see more, it's about socioeconomic status. We prefer to kind of hook up or mate with people that kind of are similar to us, usually in some degree, right? We see more multi-ethnic relationships now. Couples are becoming more diverse, but usually you want to be with somebody who has some similarity, whether it be religious, spiritual, or aspects of personality. Okay, things have changed because of dating apps, right? Dating apps have allowed people to kind of find people of different backgrounds that they want to come in contact to, right? But it's also created sort of dissatisfaction in relationships too, because the data hasn't really changed even though we have all these wonderful apps in terms of people having healthy relationships. Singlehood. I think it was 46% of people at this age are single, right? So people may prefer not to be in a relationship. Women more likely to be single now, right? People are choosing singlehood. Positive outcomes of that may allow you more time to kind of get yourself together. Right? We said previously, men, we were on this very patriarchal sort of hierarchy. Men were in these relationships or marriages, and they had all the education, all the money and power. Usually when things fell apart, women were kind of left, out in the cold, right? Now it's different, right? Women are making more income now, so they may be choosing not to have those sort of situations. They want to get themselves together and feel secure in all aspects before entering into serious relationships. Okay, I'm going to end here so that our next group, who's our next group? Okay. That our next group can come up here and present. Let's ready your laptop.
Dynamic system theory. So the definition, instead of thinking of behavior as something that is in a straight line, it shows how small changes can cause like big shifts in our lives. So with everything influencing each other in more of a continuous and evolving process. And so here we see fields that it is used in, and obviously in the developmental psychology it is used. In understanding the cognitive and motor, emotional, and social development, and it folds in a non-linear way. As I said, it's not continuous, and in dynamic fashion. And then we also have emotion regulation, which is studying how emotions and responses are regulated through dynamic interactions with the person and with their environment. And we have cognition or cognitive, which is investigating how thought patterns emerge and stabilize and shift over time, particularly in a more like complex task. And we have also social psychology, which is exploring how group behaviors and interactions evolve, especially in terms of collective dynamics or social influences. So we have key features of dynamic system theories. So the first one we have is non-linearity, which are small changes leading to larger effects. An example that I put here was from childhood to adolescence. So we noticed that when children are more in a consistent pattern of emotions, you see like they're more happy, but then as soon as they become older, new emotions are arising because there are wrong hormonal effects about it, where our bodies are changing, so there are new emotions that we have to discover, and so we get to test that out. And the next one is interdependence, which is interaction among system components. Another example I put here was also from early childhood, because typically as children we're a little bit more self-centered, we're only worried about ourselves. But as we are then engaging with other little children, we start to learn the idea of sharing, how to work together, and gradually it becomes a little bit more gradual understanding. Like, so
emergence is basically the taking complex behaviors that arise from interactions, and self-organization is using those complex behaviors to form patterns and structures. And both taking the thing that development isn't self-programmed, but done through different types of systems, like the environment and internal systems. And an example of this is like a baby who has no prior knowledge of calling. They develop the motor skill through an environmental motivator, like a toy, and concepts such as trial and error, and its physical capabilities. So next is Esther Dallin and Linda B. Smith's dynamic system approach to development. They are the founders of dynamic system theories, and they theorize that development is a complex, self-organizing system. The theory was developed through the observations of a child's movement, which is like maturity and interaction with the environment. And infants would develop differently through many environmental factors. So another thing about this is like the butterfly effect. So usually children would have a sensitive development, meaning that even the slightest change in an infant's life can significantly alter their development, influencing them. And this could be like parenting styles and their exposure to the environment.
So psychologists believe that people learn best when they interact with others, and an example is like a child learning to solve a puzzle. At first, they might not know where to start, but with a parent's help, they can try to put the pieces together. And this is what he called the zone of optimal development. And the difference between this is what you can do alone and what you can do support. However, dynamic system theory says learning happens through many factors working together, like the environment, stabilities, and experience. This idea connects to philosophy because both agree that development is from interaction. And another example could be like child learning. To walk doesn't just figure out alone. They practice in a safe environment, like he has said, and but it's also the support of adults or parents that are around them and his growing strength. Both theories show how learning is shaped by what's around you. Philosophy and the dynamic system are similar because both of them are learning what happens through interaction. And another example is the children learning how to cook because of how experience have shown them. And in their own dynamic system, it happens to like it depends on the success that they have, and many things like the results of the kitchen and the coordination. It's like what you have available towards you that helps you in a way how to learn, like learning the recipe, learning what tools you have, and that's it actually.
So next we have the Wagner's social learning theory. So the Albert Wagner's social learning suggests that people learn through observing others and imitating their behaviors, attitudes, and emotions. An example that I was going to give is essentially the theory itself, because the experiment was taking place with children and with adults. And so these adults would come into the room and there would be a bubble doll. The adults would then act aggressive towards the ball by punching it and doing all these aggressive actions towards the doll, and the children were observing the adults. So but there was two differences. One adult was praised and the other adult was not. It was more, I guess, punished in a way to show that like, it's not good to be showing this aggressive behavior. But both actions show that the child does imitate the aggression. But the difference was that one of the children was happy that they were being aggressive and the other child was not happy. They had an understanding that maybe, this isn't right.
Okay, so the last theory we're going to talk about will be the camp theory, which is known to demonstrate conservative dynamical system. Some key points that the theory pointed out were focus on quasi, periodic motion, Secondary to initial condition is known as the butterfly effect. How a minor stressor can impact your mood throughout the day. Dynamic systems are non-statistic, constantly evolving to meet new situations. An example would be a baby learning how to walk is a great example of a motor development. Interacting with your environment and your body measures provides a way to explore a change in the complex system. So that will be the end of our PowerPoint. We do have two questions we would like to ask. The first one will be, how could different constraints, individual tasks, and environmental influence behavior? And then the other one will be, what other ways the dynamic system theory influence an individual?
Anyone has any? First of all, great presentation, right? I think for the most part, what you're trying to describe is how, there's different systems throughout our experience in life, which is our environmental, our sort of physical systems, things we're limited to, all these different things, and how they tend to have random orderness, but once they begin to interact with each other, they cause more organized structures. Right, is that what I'm kind of understanding from it? So how we can go from disorganized and randomness to more organized features of what a human being would be to thrive and get involved. So if you enter a new environment, although it may be chaotic at the beginning, it tends over time to become more organized, and one will thrive and survive and adapt in that environment. Is that kind of what
Yeah, that's what we're trying to.
yeah, which is interesting, right? We say that's really how the universe is formed, right? Big Bang and chaos, and now we have an organized solar system with the sun in the middle and all these things. So how can different constraints influence these behaviors? Well, exposure to different environments, we know, allow for new forms of neurons to grow, right? And new neural connections to happen. So essentially, you become your environment whenever you, depending on how long you stay in that environment, right? So we're, like I said last class, primarily we're just organisms like any other organism. We tend to evolve and adapt. We're a little bit different though, because of that prefrontal cortex, which means that we will change faster than bees and ants and things of that nature because we have that high level of thinking. So I say, yeah, it differs because the better your environment is in a healthy way, the more healthy you will tend to be as a human being. But it still kind of varies because think of this. You all probably in high school and grammar school, be like, we're all in the same school, but there's a valedictorian, salutatorian, there are people with 5.0 GPAs, AP classes, and there's a bunch of people not that great at school. You're like, what is the difference if we possibly, most of the people live in the same area, right? And even if it was like an impoverished area, you'd be like, hey, this is a very poor area. Why are some people thriving? Why are some people just naturally more smart, intelligent, right? Okay, well, maybe they're not naturally more smart. Maybe there's some other things happening there too, right? Maybe the other people don't have the motivation to just be exposed to what's required for that system. The school is a system, right? Some people thrive at it, some people don't. Don't mean that the people are more intelligent. It may mean that other people are just not that interested or highly unmotivated. So we say there's no really concise answer outside of environment, I believe, just shaping the behavior in some way. Anyone else for the second question? What are other ways could dynamic systems theory influence an individual? What do you think? I think the task portion is important. If you sit in school, once again, we say school, if you say, hey, I have to do the paper, I have to do the presentation, I have to do this in order to move on, you are kind of forcing people to go beyond their typical constraints, right? So it's like if it's hard math, you have to pass a class whether you're gonna understand it or not. Eventually force yourself to understand it, and now you've made all these new neural connections, which will probably help you in other classes, right? So you're like, if you force, won't say force, but if you kind of motivate people to complete tasks, overall they become more successful, right? In that environment, they become more successful in that particular environment. So the task part is important. Because in school, like, we don't want to do all this work, but we know that after everything we learn, we probably are a little bit more intelligent, even though we didn't have the motivation for it. Anyone else? All right, for presentation. Hey, how many other groups do we have left for presentation? Is there, you have the left? There's maybe 2 more, right? Okay, so we'll have one week 15 and then one maybe the next Monday. Will you the last group? 7? You're 8, okay. Okay, so when we come back, let's do group 7 and stay. Good job. All right, class, that is it for today. Everyone have a great Thanksgiving. Remember, no class next week. And I'll probably put up a couple more discussions sometime next week. Or maybe, I don't know, I'll figure it out. I'll put an announcement if anything changes. But have a great Thanksgiving, enjoy time with your family, and I'll see you when you return.